I'm Ashley Harwood, and today we are going to be talking about tools, specifically the kind of tools that I'm using to cut and shape wood while it's spinning on the lathe. Let's get started. So one question that I get quite a bit is, Ashley, what is your opinion on carbide tools? I think that the first thing we need to do is talk about the difference between carbide cutting tools and traditional gouges and chisels. So the biggest difference is that carbide tools are scrapers, whereas the gouges that I'm using are cutting the wood. What's the difference between cutting and scraping? When you're cutting, you have the bevel support of a cutting edge. The bevel is preventing the wood that's behind the wood that's getting cut from being torn. Whereas when you're scraping, you're just scraping that surface, and so you might end up with a subpar finish if you don't have that bevel support of the wood. So I think one thing that you're going to be able to see is a big difference between traditional gouges and carbide tools is that when you're cutting with traditional gouges and it's working the way it's supposed to, you can send ribbons flying across the room. Traditional tools take a bit more practice and a bit more knowledge to know how to use them well. But once you put in the time and the homework and you gain that knowledge and you put in the time to practice, then using traditional gouges can be very rewarding. You can remove a whole lot of wood really quickly and still achieve a nice clean finish. When you're cutting with carbide tools, it's very easy. It doesn't take a whole lot of practice to learn how to use carbide tools. You can definitely get to the shape, but at times it might take a little bit longer, and you might have to do some more, fixing to the finished surface once you get to the shape that you want. The other thing that I think is a really important distinction, when I'm cutting with a bowl gouge and I'm pushing the gouge through the wood, it can only move through the wood as fast as it's cutting the wood. I'm creating a smooth, continuous curve, in part by utilizing the resistance that I'm getting from the wood. With a carbide tool, if I want to make a nice, smooth, pleasing curve, I'm basically tracing it in the air, if that makes sense. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at what makes up these tools. First, we'll start with the carbide tools. The carbide tools usually have a shaft with a flat bottom. And that's because they're meant to be used like this, straight up and down, and they're meant to be kept level and to be cutting at the center of the piece of wood as it's spinning. Now, there are round cutter tips and square cutter tips. These cutter tips are meant to be used until they're dull and then thrown away and replaced. It's actually brilliant marketing, if you ask me. As you start to dull part of the surface here, you can just rotate it around and you can use a new part of the surface until the thing is completely dull, and then you would throw it away and replace it. These take very little training to learn how to use. And I think that that's in large part what's contributed to their popularity these days. Now, traditional gouges, on the other hand, do take a bit of training and practice to learn how to use. So when we look at this gouge, there's a few different parts I want to talk about. These gouges are measured in their diameter, and then they also have a flute that runs down the middle. The flute is what allows the wood to escape as it's being cut. And we have a bevel that goes all the way around the cutting edge, and then we have the cutting edge itself. This part back here is not a part of the bevel. That's actually where I've just removed tool steel to make it easy for my tool to make it around the inside of a concave curve. Now, when we're looking at this a little bit more closely, we have the nose of the gouge, which is right here, and then we have the wings of the gouge. The way this bowl gouge is going to cut as it's moving through the wood, it's going to be slicing through the wood with the nose, and it's going to be peeling with the wing at the same time. It's a very efficient way of removing material. Like I said, it takes a bit of training, and then it takes some practice to become proficient at using a bowl gouge. Most of my bowl gouges have what's called a 40-40 grind on them. The wings are straight and they're swept back at 40 degrees from the length of the tool. So if I hold the tool up like this, there's a 40-degree sweep, and they have a 40-degree bevel angle, and that's a consistent 40-degree bevel angle all the way around the tool. That's a 40-40 grind. If I'm going to purchase a bowl gouge, there's three main things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the diameter of the tool steel, I'm looking for what type of tool steel it is, and I'm looking at the flute shape. Now, I use several different size diameters for my bowl gouges. I have a 3/4 inch diameter, that's for my bottom bowl gouge. This tool is going to have a lot of overhang off the tool rest, so I want it to be robust and I want to minimize the amount of vibration that I'm going to get during a cut. I have two gouges that are essentially the same thing but in two different sizes. This is a 5/8 diameter tool and this is a 1/2 inch diameter tool. They're both elliptical fluted bowl gouges. I use this tool for removing more bulk, for making roughing cuts, for getting things down to size. I use this tool for a lot of the spindle turning, the finer turning, and the finishing cuts on my work, whether it's spindle turning or bowl turning. Now there's three primary flute shapes in bowl gouges. You have an elliptical or parabolic flute, which is my preference if I'm going to be making a 40-40 grind. You have a V-shaped flute, and then you have a U-shaped flute. Now I like using the U-shaped flute for my bottom bowl gouge. So there's my quick and dirty explanation of the differences between carbide tools and traditional gouges. If you would like to learn about the 40-40 grind that I use on my tools and how I make that push cut, I do have a couple of online courses that are available through the woodwhispererguild.com, and the links for that are down below this video. Also, if you're interested in any of the tools that I'm showing here, with the exception of the carbide tools, I do have those available on my website. Again, the link is below, but it's ashleyharwood.com. All right, I will see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw, I do hope that you'll hit subscribe, and don't forget to also hit that little notifications bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Also, don't forget that all of the links are down below. So if you're interested in any of the tools that we're using, check out the links down below this video. I would like to give a big thank you to all of my Patreon members. Your support really helps us to continue to produce high quality photos and videos for all of my social media channels. Thank you so much. If you would like more of a behind the scenes look about what's going on here in my studio or in my classroom or with whatever project I might be working on, head on over to my Patreon page. Also, at the $10 level, those patrons will receive advance notice of when I'm going to be scheduling my classes. So if you want to make sure that you can get into my next class spots that open up, check out the Patreon page. Again, the links are down below. And lastly, I would like to give a big shout out to my top tier patrons, Andrew Nidal, Carrie Carpenter, Chris Cairns, Dr. David Matheson, Erica Vane, George Selznick, Jim Tate, Chris Jones, Mark Glonick, Robert Hunt, and Steve Snyder. Thank you so much. Well, that's all for today. I'll see you guys next time. Everybody stay safe.